All right, thank you everyone for joining our second day of training today. Today's training will be primarily focusing on retention. We're just gonna go over the training guidelines again for those of you who might not have been a part of our training yesterday about recruitment. If you could please make sure to keep your microphones muted during the training to avoid background noise. There will be an opportunity for questions at the end of the presentation. But if you have a question during the presentation that you want to put in the chat, we can Laura and I will be monitoring the chat. We might be able to answer your question during the training, or we'll make sure that that gets asked at the end of the training. Since this is only a 2-hour training, there are no formal breaks planned. But if needed, please, attend to your needs as they come up. But if you do take a break, please make sure to turn your camera off to prevent distracting others. It looks like most of you have your camera off anyways, but if you do have your camera on, just not walking around with your camera on. And then if you could please do your best to eliminate multitasking during the training. I know there's a bunch going on and it can be difficult when we are participating in these trainings on the computer to not answer your emails and stuff like that. But we're really hoping everyone can be actively engaged in the training today. So without further ado, I will pass it off to Monica Jackson, who's going to be your primary trainer for today.
All right, thank you, Jessica. And if you, there's anyone who missed it, if you could enter your name, your agency name, and your email address into the chat box, that would be awesome. We just want to make sure, I know that there's a couple different ways of getting in the training. If you went in through the Thinkific website directly, there should be a record of your registration and there won't be an issue with issuing your certificate at the end. But if not, if you had to copy and paste the link, you'll want to make sure that you just enter your information so that we can make sure that you get credit for attending today. So let's go ahead and get into it. I won't go into this as deeply as yesterday. I think many of you have heard this year after year, but I definitely want to remind everyone of what our values are for recruitment and retention. Those values include families. We value families, caregivers, customer support, support for these families, and the use of data to inform our recruitment and retention practices. All right, so yesterday we discussed ways to recruit parents to be a part of our child welfare teams. And today we're going to be focusing on the effort that we'll need to make to keep our caregivers engaged and to retain these foster homes. Also, during the recruitment training, we talked about the importance of customer satisfaction and customer experience and its relationship to recruiting and retaining foster parents. While that customer approach begins with those initial individual encounters with families, it's those experiences and impressions that caregivers had that are often going to be based on their overall experiences with our agencies. So how do we develop a supportive environment within our agencies that encourages foster parent satisfaction? We want to make sure that we're promoting the attitude and the belief that every single staff within the agency at every level has a role in supporting our foster parents. And this begins with making sure that all staff understand the importance of foster parents, because we know that without our caregivers, we're not able to fulfill our obligation to ensure the care and safety of children entering foster care. Managers definitely play a huge role in setting that office culture and the attitudes. So managers should always speak positively and respectfully about foster parents. Clerical staff answering the phones or greeting foster parents when they come into the office should be, welcoming. They should present as helpful to those prospective caregivers and to our foster parents who are already licensed with our agency. Staff at every level have the ability to make first and lasting impressions that might be used to judge the agency and influence those potential and existing foster parents' decisions about working with our agencies. So ideally, everyone within your agency should have a constant awareness of different opportunities to recruit and to support foster parents. And in addition, all staff who interact with foster parents should be trained to look for patterns and problems that foster parents might encounter. So if the same type of problem is being reported by several different families, it's likely that there's an agency-wide or system-wide problem that really needs to be addressed. So Make sure you're encouraging staff to bring those issues up during staff meetings so that strategies can be developed to either reduce or resolve those problems that foster parents might be having. When we value and respect our foster parents and show that we're committed to supporting them when they walk into our agencies, when they need help with completing required forms to get benefits, or when they might be struggling with the child's behavioral issues, they're often willing to work through those challenges, knowing that the agency is going to be there to provide the support that they need. And also, they're more likely to share those experiences with others, which can help us when it comes to leading to additional referrals for licensure. All right, let's see. So if any of the following apply to your agency, it might be time for a change. We talked about this when it came to recruitment, but these are some tips that it might be time for a change in retention efforts as well. The first question, does your agency have a lot of homes that sit idle, waiting for a placement while other families are overused? Does your agency have a trend of closing more foster homes than are open? And we know that statewide right now, we're closing approximately 1.7 homes for every home that we are opening. So we're certainly outpacing our available foster homes through closures. Is your agency closing a high percentage of foster homes within a year or two of them being licensed? Does your agency complete an unusually high number of special evaluations on your licensed foster families? That might indicate that families aren't being developed the way that they should if they're encountering certain problems. Does your agency only communicate with caregivers when it's time for a home visit or when a placement is needed? All right, so if you have determined, in fact, that it's time for your agency to enhance your recruitment efforts with foster parents, one of the first areas you should look at is your engagement with caregivers. Each opportunity to communicate with caregivers, from inquiry to placement to the time that a child returns home, is an opportunity to build trust with them and to help the family feel supported, and also to develop further skills in the caregiver. Regardless of your role with the family, when you demonstrate the ability to listen to their concerns and to answer their questions, when you follow through with your promises and share resources and information, you're helping caregivers to better understand the system and also gain a better understanding of the child's needs or whatever the situation is at hand. And this helps the family to feel more confident in their abilities, and therefore they become more capable of caring for the children that are placed with them or children who may be placed with them in the future. So let's talk about some of the things that we've heard from our caregivers. In February, we sent a survey to all foster parents and relative caregivers that had an email address on file with us in MySACWIS. And this survey was designed to capture information about the needs of foster parents and relative caregivers during the last year. A total of 1,063 surveys were completed. Some of the results so first, 57.3% of those foster parents and relative caregivers who completed the survey indicated that there were areas in the last year that they felt they needed more support. They needed more help with. And this is an increase from 48.7% when a similar survey was completed during the height of the pandemic. So that definitely shows some room for growth for us. More than 42% of the caregivers said that they needed more information about available services for children in foster care. In fact, more than 1 in every 4 of them indicated there were services needed for children in their care that they had not been able to obtain. We also learned that over 39% of these caregivers who completed the survey said they wanted more help dealing with children's behaviors. This is a common, this is common feedback that we're receiving both in our current foster families as well as closed families who close their licenses. We also learned that 30 to 35% of caregivers need childcare and respite care, and over 24% of them want to be connected to other caregivers for help and support. This direct feedback from caregivers really just helps to offer a wealth of information about the ways that we can improve our engagement with them and help provide the support that they're requesting. So let's discuss some of the skills and considerations needed in face-to-face communication with foster parents, beginning with asking the right questions. Of course, with every home visit or meeting at the office, the primary concern and the topic of discussion is going to be about the children who were placed in the home. It's going to be about the case plan and all of the paperwork that needs to be completed. But don't forget or be afraid to ask caregivers different follow-up questions about the things that they say that really might indicate that there's more that they're not sharing. And not sharing doesn't mean that they might be intentionally withholding information. At times, it might be that they're just uncertain about some things, such as whether a child's behaviors are considered normal or developmentally appropriate. Your follow-up questions might provide more information about what the foster parent is expecting and offer opportunities for you to help educate them and to normalize their experiences or even to comfort them if they're having a difficult time. I encourage you to ask a mixture of both direct and open-ended questions, such as, are there any issues that you're concerned about? Have you been able to access all of the services you believe the child needs? Is there anything you feel we should discuss today? And how are you doing with managing the challenges we discussed? If it's a licensed relative that you are engaging with and talking to, it might also be helpful to ask how they're managing their new role within the family and if they're experiencing any challenges with this role, because it is difficult with following the expectations placed by the agency that they're working with, but also trying to navigate family relationships. Sometimes we might be reluctant to ask a question because we know it could lead to more work for us, and that can be super overwhelming at times. Just remember, though, that oftentimes if we catch issues before they become a crisis, then we can help prevent them from ever reaching that level, and we'll save ourselves more work later on. All right, the next skill that you see here is listening. It's a good practice to listen fully when foster parents express issues and concerns, even when you know or believe that you know what's going to be said next or what it's going to take to solve the problem. To make sure foster parents feel valued and respected and heard, we have to avoid interrupting them. And then we have time. Time is something that we never seem to have enough of. I think everybody here knows that very well. But when we're interacting with foster parents during our meetings and conversations, we should make sure that we're able to focus on the caregiver. We shouldn't begin a conversation that we don't have time to finish. Be honest about why right now might not be the best time for a conversation. You may want to say, I'm leaving the office now for a scheduled meeting with another foster parent. Would it be okay if I call you after the meeting to discuss this or set up a time to meet with you and have this conversation? And you just don't want to start something that you're not able to finish, but make sure that you are scheduling that time or making the time to listen to their concerns. All right, the next consideration is body language. When you're meeting with the caregiver in person, you have the ability to look at them and to assess their body language. Don't let this go to waste. If you tell a caregiver, if you can tell a caregiver might be having a hard time, if they're overwhelmed and stressed out, take time to figure out what's going on and attempt to create a plan to address the issues. We want to be seen as helpful members of the team to our caregivers. And we also want to make sure our caregivers feel that they can turn to us when something is not right. And we're going to assist them in resolving the issue. When we leave issues unaddressed, they can become more serious over time and potentially lead to the loss of a valuable placement resource. All right, when we're talking to caregivers on the phone, we'll want to ensure that we are setting limits, or not just the phone, actually, when we are talking to them on the phone, well, actually, we'll talk about text in a little bit, but we want to make sure that there are a few limits that we keep in mind. Since you're unable to see their body language through phone calls, it's important to make sure that you're clarifying the caregiver's concerns, what their requests are, and making sure that you're answering their question, that you're actually answering the questions that they're asking, and that your responses to them are clearly understood by them. If a call is completed during a time that you're not at your desk and you're unable to document the conversation, just make sure to jot down a few notes about the call and follow up that might be needed as soon as you're able. If you give the caregiver a lot of information on the call, then it's always a good idea to follow the call up with an email or a letter with the information included, just for reference and to make sure that everyone's on the same page. You want to make sure that caregivers understand when you're available.
Jessica, this is Jody Barnhart over at DHS Wayne County. I was calling about your Rise and Shine.
I think somebody needs to mute themselves. Thank you. You want to make sure that caregivers understand, when you're available by phone, when you're not available, and what the response time expectations are if they leave messages for you. This helps to avoid any frustrations and concerns on both sides. Let caregivers know if you're unavailable before and after a certain time and what they should do in the meantime if they do need to reach someone in an emergency after hours. All right, and as I noted, we talk about text communication. What do you think are some of the things that you might want to remember when it comes to texting? I'll pause for a moment if any of you want to share your thoughts in the chat. And Jessica, if you see any thoughts, feel free to share them.
So we have tone of text and wording, punctuation. It is easily misunderstood.
All right. Yes, all of those things are important. I think one of the first things that we have to make sure that we are keeping in mind is confidentiality. There's no way of knowing who's around when a text message is received. So don't use text messages to send private information. And while you might have a great relationship with the caregiver, sometimes written communication is difficult to interpret. So you want to make sure that you are being professional in text messages. Recipients of written messages correctly separate seriousness from sarcasm only 56% of the time. And it becomes 73% when messages are conveyed in a voice recording. So, there are definitely limitations and barriers to not being face-to-face when it comes to interpreting or assessing the messages that are being sent back and forth. Also, don't use text acronyms. Not only is it impossible to always know what every single acronym means, you want to make sure that there aren't misunderstandings based on many of the common acronyms that are used. Some of our audiences aren't as savvy when it comes to text acronyms, social media, and some of the ways that we often learn what these acronyms mean. So just to avoid those misunderstandings, just make sure that you are communicating clearly, not using those acronyms. Also remember that text messages can be FOIA'd. So you do not want to communicate in text anything that might potentially become an issue later on if it were to become public knowledge. You also want to set limits and be clear with caregivers about your availability when it comes to text, just the same as you would do with telephone. This can be especially important when it comes to texting because your cell phone provides access to you whether or not you're in the office. Like with phone communication, communicating your availability helps to limit those frustrations and allows you to separate your work and your personal life without always feeling obligated to respond immediately to non-emergency situations. You'll want to consider potential misunderstanding of tone. When a message is read versus heard, the speaker's tone really is in the mind of the reader. This can result in an unintended message being delivered. We all know that texting can be really convenient, but be sure to balance text communication with phone and in-person contact. You don't want that to be the only way that you're communicating with foster parents. Once relationships have been established, it's easier for foster parents to determine the tone of your text, and this helps to reduce those misunderstandings also. Text messages are great for quick check-ins, to let foster parents know when you might be having a training, or just as reminders about certain things. But you definitely want to reserve your most important concerns and any sensitive issues to being addressed verbally, by phone, or during an in-person communication. All right, so follow up. Foster parents are dependent on us in so many ways. You know, they depend on us for services, for payments, information, training, and a host of other resources. So just make sure that you follow through on all items that you promise to them. You know, that follow through is really important in making families feel engaged and supported, and it reduces frustration and helps families provide better care for the children who are placed with them. So when it comes to development, does anyone have any thoughts of what exactly is meant by foster parent development? It's many of the things that you see on the screen: the education and coaching, instruction. And development is the process of leading potential foster parents from that very first contact to becoming licensed, and once they're licensed, helping to equip them with the knowledge and skills to address challenges that they face as they foster. From the initial inquiry through the first placement, all the way to a child's return home, each contact that you have with a foster family is an opportunity to really expand their knowledge base and their abilities. So never assume that caregivers know something that you haven't spoken to them about before. There's a lot to remember, and things that seem second nature to you that may be new information to caregivers. So make sure to check in with them after a child leaves the home. Make sure that there's no lingering issues like payments that haven't been made, or items that the child left behind that need to be provided to the child and their family. This is also a good time to see if the caregiver feels like they could use a break from placements, or go on hold for a while. These check-in calls just gives you a sense of knowing how they are processing the loss of a child going home, and how you should proceed in terms of providing support to them, or placing children in the home with them immediately or not. Prospective and existing families want to feel confident. They want to know that when issues arise, that your agency is going to be right there, preparing them and assisting them to face the challenges that they have, and to meet the needs of the children placed with them. So let's watch a short video by a therapist on how training helps to support foster parents.
If you have children that are adopted or from the foster care system on your caseload.
One moment, is it playing on my end? It looks not.
Like frozen?
It's not playing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go back and then try it again. Let's see if it loads fine. There we go.
If you have children that are adopted or from the foster care system on your caseload, you already know that working with their adoptive parents or their foster parent or the caregivers is really an important part of that process. And sometimes we get a little stuck in how best to support them, because likely what they're experiencing with their child is complicated. It's intense. It brings up a lot of different emotions. From my perspective, one of the most important things that we can do to support foster parents and adoptive parents, and as I say the word parents, it's anyone who's in that role of being a carer for the child, is to provide education. What I find is that oftentimes there are unrealistic expectations that lead to a sense of inadequacy or a sense of I'm doing something wrong. As an example, you might have a parent that has a fantasy that now that the child is in their home and they're doing everything right, they are providing a nurturing environment, they're providing a safe environment, they are showing up, they're doing the work, they're connecting, all of this stuff. And they may be confused, why is my child still acting out? Why is my child still highly dysregulated? Don't they know that they're safe now? And it's really important that we offer education to really help them understand that oftentimes what the child is working through may not even have anything to do with them. That they have a whole history before they ever came into relationship. And that history goes all the way back into utero. And the experience that the child had in utero about whether they were wanted or weren't wanted, or their own dysregulated patterns that were formed through their own developing autonomic nervous system. And then depending on how things went, birth and after that, and life happened. Right? Life happened, things happened before this child ever made their way into their home. And yes, even doing everything right, even showing up still might mean that the child is struggling and dysregulated because they're processing some of the things that they've experienced ever since they came into the world for some children. So that's my biggest offering here. When we're working with these parents, in addition to just seeing them, holding them, being with them, letting them know we get it, it's really hard, is to educate them, to support them in having more realistic expectations so they don't find themselves so disappointed, so frustrated, wondering what they have done wrong. Because yes, they are trying and they're showing up with really great intention. And sometimes there's just other work that still needs to be done. So empower the parents that you're working with, educate them, hug them energetically, tell them that you're there for them, and then help them set realistic expectations for themselves and also for their child.
All right. Inevitably, issues are going to emerge during placements that foster parents are unfamiliar with or that require additional skills. And at times, as we heard from therapist Lisa Dion, foster parents will do everything they should be doing and still not see the results that they might expect in terms of behavioral challenges or progress with the children in their homes. Both situations require education and training. Foster parents should never have to wait extended periods of time to begin addressing those concerns that they're living with day to day, those presenting issues that they're having with the children. It's okay to not have all the answers right away. When licensors become aware of foster parent concerns, it's not okay to leave them hanging and to expect them to figure everything out on their own. As part of the agency's responsibility to provide ongoing education and support, licensors should recommend or provide online or in-person training, books, videos, or connect foster parents with service providers or other individuals that can assist them with navigating the issues that they are facing. We just don't want to leave them out there feeling like they are having to do this on their own. That definitely backfires when they don't have the experience in certain areas and don't have the support that they need to get through it. You can also assist the development of foster parents through annual and renewal home visits. These visits offer a chance to take a look at the challenges and successes that a foster parent or foster family may have experienced during a review period, but also to identify any gaps in knowledge or skills and to make a plan for filling those gaps. Not only does training help to increase the foster parents' knowledge and skills, but it also helps to build their confidence and their ability to care for children with varying needs. And as all of you know, many of the children that are coming to care are having more extensive needs. Like I stated earlier, many times foster parents won't always shy away from the challenge when they know that they have an agency and supports in place to assist them. If annual home visits are the only time that foster parents and licensing staff communicate, the agency is missing out on an important opportunity to continue developing the families, and these missed opportunities to provide support increases the likelihood that families are going to close their licenses. It's highly recommended that licensors schedule or make themselves available for interim visits with families to discuss their needs for resources or education and to assess their level of satisfaction with the agency and the agency with the staff but also the agency as a whole and the resources that are provided to them. Of course, workers and families often do face significant constraints on their time as it is. So if interim in-person visits are too difficult to schedule, then maybe the workaround would be to conduct check-ins with families by phone, at least quarterly and more frequently whenever that's possible. Support visits and calls are most beneficial to families during those times of transition when a child is coming into the home or leaving the home. Those first few days of a new placement, immediately after a child has left, and then after a little time has passed, there are quite a few changes in routine that families experience. Also, the emotions that are attached to a child entering the home or leaving the placement, especially if a child's been there for a while. So it's a good idea to check in with these families to make sure that they are doing okay, and if they need any additional support, that our agencies are able to provide that. I do want to just point out, it's those times of transition that we have often heard from foster parents as being some of the most difficult times in needing those supports, but not hearing from workers. So it's maybe a good idea to think about that when it comes to recruitment and retention planning and ways to implement those supports during those times and those transitions. All right, our outcomes with children in care are only really as good as our individual performance in our different roles. And foster parents play an invaluable role on our teams. Caregivers strongly desire to be members of our teams. Not only does this include sharing important information with them, asking for and considering their feedback, but also respecting their time and the efforts that they put in to care for children. Active engagement and teaming with caregivers is really important to their satisfaction and also stability of the placements with children who are in their homes. So when we think about engagement and teaming, it's important to really understand the long-term effects that not doing these things can have on our families. As we struggle to find placements for children, the importance of foster families really is highlighted even more. They're definitely vital to the child welfare system, and without them, we wouldn't be able to function. When we don't value their roles and their contributions, we lose the families that we worked so hard to license. And that makes it difficult for us to find homes for children when we need them. So let's take a look at this graph. This is information that we gained from the foster home closure surveys. I'm sorry, this is just looking at the trends of foster home closures in comparison to our open homes over the last few years. The teal lines show the new unrelated foster homes that we've opened, and the green lines show unrelated foster home closures. So for years, our need for foster homes with skilled and dedicated foster parents has steadily increased, but the availability of homes for children in Michigan has not been able to keep pace.
Is this divided between relatives and valuable beds? Because I know those are looked at differently.
No, this does not include relatives. This only includes unrelated foster homes.
Okay, thank you. The closures do too?
Yes, the openings and the closures. These are only numbers related to unrelated foster homes. If relatives, no problem. If relatives are also providing unrelated care to, if they're providing care to children who are not related to them, they would be included in these numbers. It's just the relative only homes that are not. All right, so as you see, well, you don't see this, but for at least the last 7 years that I've been tracking this, we have closed more unrelated foster homes than we've opened, even though there's only 4 years on the screen. And currently we're on pace to close nearly 1,400 homes this year, and only open slightly over 800 if those trends don't change with where we are right now in the licensing process. Our progress with licensing unrelated foster homes. But fortunately, this trend can change. And we have begun to close the gap between, we had begun to close that gap between homes that had opened versus those that had closed in recent years until this past year. That gap started widening again, and we're really trying to take a look at, what the reasons are for that disparity between the open and closed homes, and what it is that we are needing to do to provide families with support to prevent those closures. Obviously, we do know that sometimes families close for reasons that are unrelated to the support we provide, and we will take a look at those reasons a little bit later in this session. But one of the primary reasons is support that are received by families, so that we know there's something that we can do to try to make a change in these areas and to reduce those gaps as we move forward. All right, and so I think now we are going to take a look at what we've learned from those closed foster home surveys. We have sent surveys to families that closed every single month to gain just some feedback from them about the reasons for closure and to figure out the areas that we can improve our involvement with them and hopefully retain more homes. So in fiscal year 21, there were 1,656 homes that closed, and that number does include both related and unrelated homes. As in the past, the way that the survey is structured is that it is voluntary. The closed foster home recipients will either receive the survey electronically. If there's an email address on file, or they'll receive it in the mail if there is no email address on file. As I mentioned, the survey is voluntary. There are 17 questions on it, just asking about their experiences. There is space for them to also add additional comments or feedback that they'd like to offer. During the past year, we received 593 surveys back from families of the 1,656 that closed. So that was a significant number. When it comes to data analysis, that's not something I determined, but it was something our data team communicated to me. So I'm sharing that with you guys. All right, so 25% of the respondents identified as relative caregivers. 66% of them were unrelated, and 9% were both related and unrelated caregivers. 38% were licensed through MDHHS, and 62% of the respondents were licensed through a private agency. All right, we asked the families to tell us why they're closing their licenses, and the top 3 reasons are indicated on the screen. The top reason was adoption, with 35% of the families. Secondly was the family's needs that were often sometimes influenced by the demands of foster care, which is the third reason, demands and stress, which was at 20%. All right, during the next couple of slides, we're going to see the areas where there's room for us to really improve our support of foster parents. Some of the most compelling feedback that we received is that 73% of foster parents who closed their licenses and responded to the survey indicated that they did not feel that they had enough support during the time that they were licensed. And this is quite significant when we consider the caregiver support survey that we sent back in February and compared to this one. 73% of our foster parents who closed their licenses told us that they didn't have enough support, and 57% of our existing foster parents are currently communicating the same message, that they need more support. So unless we provide that needed support, the families that we've worked really hard to certify are likely to also close their licenses. All right, we asked foster parents closing their licenses to tell us what they found to be their biggest challenge while they fostered. And mind you, they were able to identify more than one area if they wanted to. And so you won't see these percentages add up to 100% because some families may have indicated multiple challenges. As you see, the top reason that the top challenge that foster parents had was dealing with children's behaviors. Secondly was understanding and working through court processes, and finally working with visitation requirements. I also want to note that 12% of the families indicated that they would not recommend fostering to a friend, and 35% of them were uncertain about whether they would make that recommendation. And this should really make us wonder how many potential families we might lose due to negative word of mouth. So if you want to ensure that foster parents don't close their licenses with a negative view of child welfare, just please think about this information and evaluating the ways that your agency communicates with and supports your existing foster parents.
Hey, Monica, we had a question related to this.
Okay.
Somebody had said support from whom, licensing staff or foster care staff? Marissa said that. I believe that's probably related to your part where you're talking about lack of support from the worker. Do you remember if the closed home survey breaks it down based on staff position?
It does not break it down by staff position. The response is usually in response to the agency. Yeah.
So, I mean, right, the foster care worker is usually the one who's interacting with the families as much, but as licensors, checking in and making sure that families have what they need could help support the foster care worker and your family, most importantly, to make sure that they are getting what they need.
Right. And as you'll see on this screen, there were some positive takeaways from the closed home surveys. As you see, I don't know that if it's on the screen. Let's see. Yes, 65% of respondents indicated they found at least one of their agency workers to be their greatest source of support during their time as foster parents. So, and that was more than other areas of support like friends or family members. 65% of them found workers to be the greatest source of support. But sometimes when other staff members who may be interacting are not providing that same communication or support, it does influence their overall view of the agency and the support that they're provided. So what we've definitely found is, because the survey did allow for foster parents to make comments, and many of them were very specific in naming names of who they found to be supportive and the ways that they were supported. But as we started the training, it really has to be an agency-wide approach because anyone who is interacting with the foster parents and having the ability to really influence their experience really has to know that, their interaction is making a big difference, and their lack of interaction is going to make a big difference as well if they are not receiving the communication or the resources that they need. Other of the positive takeaways included that 70% of respondents would actually describe their experience with fostering between the range of good to excellent. So many of them, even if they had issues with resources or support, still walk away believing that their experience was a positive one. However, 84% of parents, this is actually a good thing too. 84% of them said that their agency did not ask them to take more children than they could handle. And so agencies are being respectful about foster parent capacity and placing, being mindful of parents' abilities and skills with the number of children that they place in their care. And then 71% indicated that they weren't asked to take a placement of children with needs that they couldn't handle as well. So again, agencies are being mindful for the most part in placing children that foster parents have the knowledge and skills and abilities to handle their needs. Any other questions before we move forward?
I'm sorry, Monica, Shannon Brown. I put it in the chat. I don't know if it's possible, but when you guys are receiving the positives and the names, if that can be passed along to us in the field, just so we can pass the positives on to our staff, because we need positives right now. And we don't see those. So I'm just wondering, we don't see what you see, so I'm just wondering if there's a way to pass on that so we can give the acclimates to our staff where they need it, or they can get it, I mean.
Okay, we may not be able to indicate who said it because the surveys are supposed to be anonymous.
Right.
But as much as possible, we can try. Shannon and I, that is something we can certainly try to look into more, and maybe even passing some of the information along to the BSCs to see if they might assist, because we have a really small unit to be able to.
I was going to say, I know that's a lot of work. I know it is. Yeah, I know.
All right.
I remember those. So I know it's a lot of work. We're dying out here, you know, so I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I think, any type of positive feedback which is why we have it here, because it's not all about what we're not doing right. There are some things that we are doing right too, and I definitely wanted to highlight those too. But before we leave the screen, I do want to mention that when it comes to one of the questions that is on the survey is whether foster parents who close their licenses would be willing to consider having a role in foster care, even though they decided to close. And 33% of them actually said they would consider mentoring new foster parents. 25% said that they would consider providing respite. And 47% said that they would consider fostering in the future. So it's really this, again, highlights the importance of making sure that we treat our foster parents well, because these are, they may become a resource that we could utilize in the future when it comes to still making a difference in the, with the children that we have the responsibility of placing. All right. I think I skipped one. Okay, here we go. So we do not want to wait until foster parents have closed their licenses to take into account how they felt about fostering and working with our agencies. This is something that we should do at least annually to determine our foster parents' needs and consider their ideas and assess the areas in which we should focus to strengthen our support for them. And while, from central office, we send the survey out annually, it's not a bad idea for agencies to really hone in on some of the specific feedback and send these surveys to your families also. What you see on the screen is a sample survey that is included in the Treat Them Like Goal Best Practice Guide. On the survey, you'll notice that there are questions to foster parents about the training that the agency provides, the information that they receive prior to new placements being made, and their overall feelings about the service provision and support from staff. It also has space for foster parents to leave open-ended comments. So this is an example of a survey that your agencies can use to make sure that you're assessing how foster parents feel and what they need, and if there's different things that your agency can provide to make their experiences better. Also included in the Treat Them Like Goal Best Practice Guide is a sample stay interview question. There's questions that can be used to assess what the family values and what types of things would keep them motivated to continue fostering. This is a wonderful tool that can be used to communicate excuse me, how much your agency values these families and the agency's desire to identify and improve any issues that could create dissatisfaction with their fostering experience or with the agency. These interviews can be done when the family begins to foster, again, during planned intervals, such as prior to planning an annual appreciation event, also when the family faces a major challenge or may be considering closing their license. Because you just want to kind of stay connected and stay involved and engaged in being able to identify and address foster parents' needs. So we are going to move on to talking about how we can retain our homes. But let's first watch a short video that reminds us of the daily experiences that many foster parents have.
What's wrong? Tyler had a birthday party and he didn't invite me. He said that his mom thinks I'm too hard to handle. I would have tried so hard to be a good boy. She doesn't even know me.
Okay, so the Adderall is really important to administer first thing in the morning before any behaviors start to escalate. Then I'm prescribing 1 tablet of methylphenidate at lunchtime with food. I'm gonna need you to take notes daily so that we can track the effectiveness.
Hello?
I saw that it was your birthday and I just wanted to phone and wish you a happy belated 40th.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm sorry we didn't get the invitation out to you. I know, like, with your big family, you might feel a little stressed in that kind of setting. Hey, thanks so much for calling. I've got to go, but I hope you're doing really great. Love you.
He made me so angry. I just wanted to hit him.
But you didn't. And a broken wall is so much easier to fix than a broken person.
Why am I so broken? Why can't someone just fix me?
I hate this tour! I hate it! No! Stay away! You're not my mom! Go away! No, I'm so dumb!
All right, any thoughts about the video before we keep going? All right, you guys can enter your thoughts in the chat if you would like, and I will acknowledge them before we go to the next screen. Or give time for it because I can't see you. Okay, so what are some of the things we can do to hold on to our foster homes? Providing excellent customer service is something that we've talked about by practicing the principles that we have discussed regarding communication and responsiveness, and also providing assistance when foster parents need support. But along with that, we can connect foster parents with support groups and connect them with a foster care navigator. I think I may have mentioned this before, but foster care navigators traditionally were involved with helping families with getting licensed and helping them to address different needs during the licensing process. But there's now a mentorship component of their roles that they can provide mentorship and assistance to families that are already licensed. So just be aware of that. We are now including a flyer about post-licensure foster parent supports in the packets that we send to new families. And so, Jessica, let's maybe make a note to make sure that we're sharing that with participants who might be interested if that's something that they would like to also offer to their families.
Sure thing.
Thank you. Also, appreciation events. To recognize families. Giving foster parents the information that they need is a wonderful way to support them. And it's something that we certainly should be doing and being upfront and honest about children's needs. Also creating a robust, let me just say regarding giving them the information they need. I know that there are times that we don't have a lot of information about children to pass along to foster parents. But when we do, let's make sure that we're telling them those important details that are needed to help them make informed decisions about placements and providing care for the children in their homes. Withholding information sets up the stage for mistrust between the agency and foster homes, and placing children in these homes with foster parents who aren't prepared to care for them creates a safety risk, and it increases the chances that placements will be disrupted. The next one that we see on the screen is creating a robust respite program. And this is one of the most frequent requests from foster parents, but unfortunately, it's also one of the most difficult services to assess. There's a number of reasons that agencies are encouraged to develop respite programs or opportunities for foster parents. We know that respite can help to reduce child abuse. It can reduce or prevent placement disruptions and also promote foster home retention. The National Foster Parent Association recommends that all foster parents have at least 2 days per month of planned respite care. And this might sound like it's nearly impossible to accommodate, but this relief doesn't always have to be organized formally. It can also include helping parents to identify after-school programs or summer camps, assist teens with finding jobs, and encourage foster parents to participate in support groups when they're able to network, where they can network with other parents who are willing to provide respite care on occasion. Anything that takes kind of the burden off and stress off of families are things that we should look to being able to provide assistance support or opportunities for that support. Additional efforts toward retention include developing community partnerships to help support families. In addition to physical and mental health resources, community organizations might also be able to assist with training, like fire safety training by the local police department, or car safety training that a hospital is able to provide, classes offered by the township on helping teens with job opportunities and employability skills. As issues emerge with foster families, it's a great idea for licensors to just make a list of future training ideas and determining whether there's a way that the community, that community resources might be able to assist. If not, if there isn't anything available by a community resource, then this list would still be useful in terms of planning for different types of education or training to meet the ongoing needs of foster families. Let me not forget timely payments, because that is something that is, that's common feedback that we have seen on some of the closed home surveys. It is important to note that foster parents aren't agency employees. They don't receive the same benefits that we do as employees, and they often put in more time than we do on our full-time jobs. So, when we take all of this into consideration and we add on the multiple roles that they play as being caregivers and having to partner and work with birth parents and also becoming permanent families for children who are available for adoption, they advocate for services for children. It's really a very incredible commitment that foster parents are making when they make the decision to work with our agencies and to provide care for children. So foster care payments, with those payments, we're not paying them for the work that they're doing. We are reimbursing them for many of the expenses that are related to caring for children. It's not payment for their time and efforts. And as you all know, with inflation going up, and yet the foster parent rate has not, many of these parents are taking money out of their own pockets to help continue to support children. So making payments should be a priority, and it shows respect for their efforts and the family's financial stability. And it also increases our ability to retain homes. Also, we see foster parent newsletters on the screen. This is a great way to share information and resources that foster parents might benefit from. It's a wonderful way to highlight families that might be doing well in certain areas, or even ones that face challenges, but were able to overcome them. That can be encouraging to other foster parents and being able to provide or offer tips that the families that overcame those challenges found helpful. All right. So with the video that we watched, I'm sorry, I did say I was going to acknowledge any thoughts that were in the chat. Were there any, Jessica?
I don't see any thoughts about the video in the chat.
Okay.
We did have a question earlier that kind of ties into what you were saying about payments. Somebody had asked if there would be an increase in foster parent payments, since that does play into our ability to retain homes, and that they're being asked about that from families, and they don't know what to say. So I've been getting calls like that too. What I've been making sure that families understand is that the department doesn't set the rates for payments, the legislature does. And right now, it is in the budget for fiscal year 23 that caregivers would get an 18% increase in their payments. But that's up to the Senate and House passing that as part of the budget. So if caregivers are very concerned about this and they want to advocate for that, they should definitely contact their state representative and let them know how important that is to them. Because the department is also in agreement with those rates going up. So that's the messaging I've been delivering if you want to steal that.
Thank you. All right, so relative to the video, I do think that the start of the video was really accurate in stating that foster care and adoption can be rewarding and change lives for the better, but it is a really tough role to take on. And there are things that we can do to make the lives of foster parents a lot better with a little bit of time and effort. And some of the ideas for that are on the screen. The first one is establishing practices that allow for a timely response to foster parents, such as making sure that you return phone calls within 24 hours or 48 hours, and providing reliable contact information to be reached during emergency situations. We don't want foster parents to wonder who they can reach out to, who they can contact when there is an urgent situation. Greeting cards to celebrate special occasions such as birthdays and holidays. We want them to know that we support them and their families, and that, and we want to celebrate with them. That means a lot to families when we acknowledge and recognize those occasions and times that are really important and special to them. Certificates to recognize and celebrate licensing anniversaries and years of service. This is something that we have recently started from central office. We've begun this year with recognizing milestone anniversaries, 1 year, 5 year, and then every 5 years after that up to year 30 with a certificate. And as they continue in years of service, some of them include a gift that might be a plaque or commemorative pins, gift cards for those higher years. And so it's just something that we wanted foster parents to know, that we recognize when they have stayed the course and continued to work with us and with children who need care. And so that is something that your agencies can also consider in being able to send a card or determine other ways that you can recognize families that stay the course with your agencies. Also highlighting foster parent accomplishments in newsletters and scheduling respite events where staff might provide childcare for a few hours, just so parents can have time for themselves. I know that at times there may be concerns about, availability of staffing, but if it's or other concerns, but if there's something that your agency can work out and be able to provide those few hours, even, those things mean a lot to families, just to know that we are considering their needs and the things that they may be going through. And then finally, offering words of encouragement, providing honest feedback, and simply just saying thank you. All right, also getting the community involved is one of the most effective ways that we can help support foster parents. It broadens the resources that are available to them beyond those that our individual agencies can provide to them. Community engagement helps to spread awareness about the role of foster parents. And not only does this support recruitment, but it also helps foster parents to feel recognized and appreciated. And that helps to improve retention. So as you see on the screen, some things we can do is to provide press coverage of positive events involving foster parents. Again, just to recognize them, and also give exposure to the role of foster parents and allow others to see them in the role of foster parents in a positive light. And I think it helps other people believe that they can do it when they see some of these things being done by people in their communities. Also speeches and press conferences by local officials recognizing foster parents, flyers and ads that highlight foster parents, public awards. Many of these kind of public messages or partnerships might include schools, partnering with the faith communities to provide support to foster parents through maybe a parents' night out, backpack drive during back to school time, providing meals to families when they receive a new placement, or starting foster parent support groups for members of their congregation. Also, organizations in the community could host clothing drives or holiday gift drives, develop mentorship programs for youth who are placed in the homes of these foster parents. And sometimes this may help youth, and this would help the youth that is receiving the mentorship, but also provide respite for parents. In doing any of these things, you just want to make sure that you are protecting the confidentiality of children in care with any communication or publication that's highlighting foster parents. And then I think finally, there's a couple others, working with businesses to offer discounts or coupons for families, but also making sure that you are always trying to promote the message that while everyone may not be able to become a foster parent, anyone can support them, and providing concrete ideas on ways that can happen, but also entertaining their ideas about ways that they may want to help. All right, support by other foster parents plays a really crucial role in foster parents' decisions to continue fostering. In reviewing some of the comments on the closed home surveys, I read time after time about foster parents who very badly needed to connect with other parents and talk to other parents about many of the things that they were going through. So the importance of that peer support is something that we should look to provide or connect them with during the time that these families are fostering. There is a Dr. Karen Fortuna from Dartmouth School of Medicine who documented her research about the importance of peer support in 2019. And she came up with a report, and from her report, many of the studies and even self-reflection on the benefits that we gain from sharing relationships with others. We know that what others can provide helps us with, we gain mutual support and concern. We know that providing and encouraging opportunities for peer support helps to increase foster parent retention. While our agency should always be willing to assist foster parents when the need arises, peer support just helps to offer additional sources for information and guidance, reassurance, and it often reduces the level of dependence that foster parents have on workers. So when time becomes an issue for workers because there's so many responsibilities or so many cases, making sure that foster parents are connected to other peers or mentors or sources that they can still receive support can be really beneficial and help to contribute to their positive adjustment as foster families. All right, so let's take a look at different types of peer support. Support groups is one I think that we often think of, and they're really about just forming social communities and creating safe places and safe spaces for foster parents to share personal experiences without worrying about being judged. It's a place where their feelings can be validated by others who understand firsthand what foster parents might be experiencing, and it's a place where they can gain new insight and learn new skills and solutions and coping strategies to deal with situations going on in their homes. If a support group doesn't exist in your area, it would be highly beneficial to team with some veteran foster parents to try to get one started. Foster parents from some agencies have used social media platforms like Facebook Live to connect with other foster parents to gain more interest in an in-person group where space or location might be a concern. And sometimes they're used to supplement in-person meetings. Developing a network of respite providers. So anytime your agency hosts an appreciation event or training, you want to be sure that you allow time and maybe even provide activities for foster parents to engage with one another. Bringing foster parents together during events and support groups helps them to build relationships that oftentimes leads to them providing support for one another in the form of information, advice, and sometimes even respite care. All right, as I mentioned before, our foster care navigator now offers post-licensure support services that might include help with getting, applying for childcare, or help with locating other benefits or resources, completing paperwork, advice for dealing with certain concerns or issues. They don't, so their services now go beyond licensure. The number, I think most are familiar with it, is 855-MISH-KIDS. If any of you are, thinking of a foster parent who might need some additional support, you can certainly have them call to connect them with a navigator. And then we have peer liaisons and advocates. They either connect foster parents to resources and services by providing information or referrals, or they might help parents address needs and challenges with different agencies or systems. One particular organization that provides advocacy and support for foster parents and is a statewide, they service foster parents statewide, is Fostering Forward Michigan. We can certainly add their email address to or website address to the chat if any of you are interested in learning more about Fostering Forward and the services that they might provide. And then finally, we have informal or formal mentorship and coaching programs to connect foster families with more experienced foster families who can offer insight and help to families to develop their skills. We do have a contract template in place for agencies that are interested in creating a formal foster parent mentorship program. And we are exploring some other options for helping to get some mentorship programs off the ground. AFPR funds, and if your county has strong family safe children's funds, both of these can be used for this purpose. For any new peer support programs that your agency might plan to develop, you just want to make sure that you're offering training to the peer supporters, even if they have been fostering for years. This training should you should be sure to include information about confidentiality and privacy, about boundaries and self-care, common issues in foster care, and resources that are available to foster parents. Also remember that these peer supporters are themselves going to continue to need support. They need to know that we don't expect them to be invincible just because they're in a mentoring role to other families. They might experience challenges in their own homes and need assistance with training or resources. They may become triggered as a result of helping other families deal with concerns or challenges, and those issues will also need to be addressed. And at times they might just need to take a break. So situations like these should be planned for in advance, so that any foster parent mentors know how they can receive additional support. And if they don't have the answers to questions while dealing with families, they need to know who to come to be able to provide that additional support or answers that the families need. I want to encourage, I typically would encourage you to visit Michigan.gov Hope for a Home to explore some of those different resources. Recently, our web pages have been updated and some things have been shifted around. So we are needing to work through some of those things, but maybe check back in a few weeks or a month or so, and hopefully we'll have many of those resources up and available. They're still there, but some of it is kind of scattered around. So this is also just a resource that you should be able to share with your families for training and organizations that offer support to them. All right, sometimes we know that families might get a placement as soon as their license becomes effective. We're just waiting for DCWL to confirm that the license is open. But there's also times like when families have narrower preferences, before they receive a placement. It might be a while before that first placement arrives. So while they're waiting, we do want to encourage you to continue engaging with them and providing opportunities for development and helping them to feel like they are still a part of the team. And some of the ways that we can do that is by having that newsletter to help them feel connected to what's going on in the county and with the agency. Encouraging families to provide respite for other families. That's a great way for them to be involved in foster care, maybe deal with some of the challenges and not have to do it full time. So they are able to gain that experience with caring for children, and also helps other existing families. Also connect them with an experienced foster parent mentors. Some of the mentorship programs that I am seeing being developed are starting with, from the time a family is licensed all the way through the first few weeks of them receiving a new placement, just to help them navigate some of the transitions that they might experience with, learning about foster care and then beginning to do it. And then finally, inviting them to assist with foster parent recruitment activities and events. So if your county or your agency might be hosting events involving some of these newer parents that don't have a placement with some of the planning, are going to help speak to other families about, why they became involved in foster care. And some of the needs, it may just be beneficial to hear it from other families that are involved and not always just from the agency's perspective. Another way to retain homes is to make sure that we are helping to remove barriers for families as often as we can. And one way to help remove barriers is to ensure that current and potential foster families are aware of the services and benefits that are available to them. And the one specifically highlighted here is the Family Incentive Grant that's specifically intended to provide financial assistance to correct issues that might interfere with licensure or continued compliance with licensing rules. During this past year, the eligibility criteria for receiving FIG funds was expanded to include additional services and expenses in an effort to make sure that we are providing greater support to families that might be experiencing barriers to becoming licensed. Please review FOM 980 for additional information about FIG. Jessica, I don't know if there's anything that you would want to add about FIG before we move on.
No, I don't think so. Just, if you're not sure, make the request. We have a lot of money still left to spend this year, so we've been trying to approve as much as we possibly can justify approving. So if you have something that you need and you're like, oh, I'm not sure, please just submit the request.
All right, thank you. All right, so earlier we went through many of the results that we received from our closed foster home survey. I do want to share one of the direct quotes from a parent who closed their license. Many of the foster parents left feedback about just how wonderful their licensing workers were to their families. And for that, we're super proud. We're incredibly grateful. But on the other hand, some of the quotes, they were really difficult to read, and to consider that some of the families who started off their foster care journey with such great intentions left because they didn't receive the support that they needed to continue providing a home for children in care. In reviewing the quotes, I was very surprised by the number of families that closed their licenses because they were never called for a placement even. Let me just share this feedback first. Let's see. So this was one of the quotes that was in a survey. It says, there's no support from the agency. We were lied to about a child to get them into our home, which resulted in our biological son being hurt. We were treated like criminals and harassed by the caseworker. I would recommend having more training for workers on how to support foster families when in high stress situations, instead of causing more stress and harm, which ended up causing us to request our foster home to be closed. In our daily work, let's please remember that word of mouth is our very best retention strategy. It has the power to bring in additional families and also to discourage potential and existing foster families from working with our agencies. Supporting our families doesn't mean that we're going to shield them from all of the challenges that might arise as they foster, but it does mean that we'll help meet their needs when they face those challenges. Families that take on children with higher needs tend to be more experienced veteran families. When foster parents know that we're going to consistently be there to assist them, they're more likely to remain licensed and over time to take on those new challenges. But foster families need time. They need that time to develop into skilled and seasoned caregivers. We found from the surveys that about 53% of the families that closed their licenses in fiscal year 21, they were licensed for less than 3 years. So they did not have an opportunity to really develop into those seasoned families. And much of that is based on the support that they receive. So what we found that foster parents left us with is really a blueprint for how we can all work to build a stronger foundation of support. And with the stronger foundation, not only can we expect to retain more of our homes from year to year, but also to grow a team of foster parents that's better equipped to care for teens and children with higher needs. So people lose their way when they lose their why. What does that mean to us? When foster parents struggle with lack of support, with payment problems, not feeling valued, and other issues with carrying out their day-to-day tasks, it becomes easy to focus on those concerns and to lose sight of the reasons why they began to foster in the first place. When we carry out our responsibilities to provide the support that foster parents need, we help them to stay committed to providing care for children in their homes. So I created this graphic just to list several ideas that foster parents, areas where they could use support. And some of these areas might not be directly serviced by our agencies. However, we can look for volunteers and programs that are willing to assist foster parents with meeting their needs. One of the best ways to ensure services are well designed to address the needs that foster parents have is to have these families help to shape the service design and delivery. So it might even be a good idea to involve foster parents in locating or helping to support, create these, I guess what I would call support teams. By involving them in the process, you're going to strengthen their engagement. You'll demonstrate that your agency recognizes and values their experience and their perspective, and you'll convey that you view them as partners, improving the lives of families and children that they serve. The more often we find opportunities to involve and support foster parents, the more that we help to build community around them and to reduce stress and burnout, and also increase the chances that they're going to continue working with us. So as we begin to bring this session to a close, I do want to take some time for any additional questions. So now is a good time to enter them into the chat while we prepare to watch a video. Yesterday, we talked about customer service during recruitment, but the experiences of foster parents, their customer experience is going to affect their decisions on remaining with our agencies. I know I keep saying that, but I really want to hone in on their message, on that message. The way we treat them affects how they feel about our agencies and how they are going to move forward with us, or whether they will close their licenses and no longer foster. So knowing that all of these things affect their decisions, we have to be very intentional about the experiences that we're creating for them and the support that we provide to them. And that customer service that we provide. So this video is going to give some tips about the ways that we can enhance customer experience for our foster parents. Before we watch the video though, are there any questions that we should acknowledge?
I had one question in here about FIG and lack of response from the FIG mailbox. We have had some technical issues with the FIG mailbox. It moved a bunch of messages that hadn't been read for some reason that we haven't been able to figure out. So if you haven't gotten a response, you can always email me directly or Trina Richardson directly, and we can make sure that we're seeing that message and we're getting it back to you. And I apologize for that issue. And I don't think there's any other questions in the chat that we haven't answered yet.
All right, we will go ahead with the video.
Companies often cite customer churn as a major impact to their bottom line. This situation is created by treating customers as transactions rather than real people. If 70% of our buying experiences are based on how we feel we were treated, shouldn't every company make customer experience a #1 priority? All good relationships are built on communication and trust. So let's explore 5 easy essentials any company can adopt when interacting one-to-one with customers. Number 1, commit random acts of kindness. Focus on what matters to your customer. It doesn't have to be flashy or expensive. It can be as simple as taking time to listen and encourage someone in need, or sharing a story or joke. Kindness is often repaid in loyalty. Trendwatching.com has identified unexpected, meaningful actions as a major customer trend in business. And I think we all know deep down that it's just the right thing to do. And these actions make both customers and employees happy, leading to greater engagement with our companies. Number 2, be proactive. Check in with your customers and uncover problems before they have to contact you. If you need help with when or how to do it, there are plenty of technologies to choose from. Then listen. Truly listen to your customers and uncover the root causes. Fix issues, even if it takes resources and time. Your investment in improved customer retention will be far better than investing money to rebuild your brand reputation and to attract new customers to replace those you've lost. Number 3, offer a +1. To those of us working in the customer experience field, we often feel the phrase, add some surprise and delight, is overused. Offering a +1 is a more actionable way to coach employees to add this surprise and delight. In each interaction, try to find an unexpected extra benefit that is unique, thoughtful, and relevant to both your business and your customers. A +1 to every experience. This can add a nice measure of creativity to an employee's job, and it's a literal way to encourage employees to add a little surprise and delight. Number 4, show your gratitude. Giving a truly special offer to customers is memorable, and it opens the door to doing business again. Or you can do something really unexpected and send a personalized note or card of thanks. Take advantage of the moments that make your customer interactions meaningful. Tell them they made your day better. Cite back something they said. Even if you develop a library of pre-approved messages for employees to use, they'll work as long as the sentiment conveyed is authentic. Number 5, put yourself in the customer's shoes. Research suggests your associates' ability to convey empathy can make or break your business. To not only hear, but to understand and feel the emotions of another can augment a positive interaction or turn around a negative one. Teach and train your associates to always put themselves in the customer's shoes. Here's a quick story to illustrate how employees can create a differentiated customer experience. Imagine yourself in a foreign country and lo and behold, you're robbed. Everything's gone, including your passport. A nightmare. That's what happened to a passenger flying Virgin Atlantic, a company that excels at customer experience by making emotional, empathetic connections. When the distraught traveler called the airline, 2 Virgin Atlantic employees came directly to the man's New York hotel room, helped him get a temporary passport from the British consulate, and booked him on a first-class flight back to Heathrow, where a limousine picked him up and drove him home. What makes this story notable? Kindness, surprise, sincerity, creativity, empathy. When we hear these stories of differentiated customer experiences, we share them with others, we pass them along on social media, and we all become fans and lifetime buyers of the brand.
And thank all of you for participating in the retention training today.